All right, thanks for joining us for another productive webinar. 3 ways employees are exposing your sensitive data. I am the host of today's event, Chuck Eiton, Marketing Manager here at Productive, joined by Pete Greco, Vice President of Sales and Technology. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some data loss. So the agenda for today, who is productive? We'll talk a little bit about that. The cost of data loss, encryption, exposure risks. I know we build it as 3 things, but we're actually going to talk about 4 ways that employees could be exposing sensitive data, and then a little bit about Securio by Global Velocity, a product that can help with some of the data loss. So, who is Productive? We're security and storage software experts for the mid-market. We can help with a lot of things like licensing, optimization of your software, assessments, determining what the right move is for securing and protecting the data of your network. And you can get a hold of us at 800-726-4099 or shoot us an email, help@productivecorp.com. So we want to say a special thanks to our sponsor of the event today, Global Velocity, and their product Securio. They can help secure sensitive data, whether it's on the cloud, on your network, lots of different places, and we'll talk a little bit more about that throughout the presentation today. So we talk a lot about the cost of data, and whether you're looking online or you're looking at different white papers out there, you hear a lot of numbers getting thrown out about you lose a record, you have data breached. What does that cost? Where's that at? Right, you hear things, Ponemon Institute, which is fairly well respected in the industry, they're saying that it costs $201 per record lost for sensitive data. This Verizon chart that just actually came out, Verizon came out with a nice little survey, they're saying the actual cost is more like 58 cents per record. And if you see on the left side there, you lose 10 records, well, it could cost you $1,000, it could cost you $20,000 or $30,000. It really depends on who you are and what you lost, and the data points here I think are pretty interesting because they have a whole wide range of, from sub 10 records lost to over 100 million, and what that actually cost organizations in real dollars. So you hear a lot of crazy numbers out there, but I thought this was an interesting way of looking at it, and you can kind of determine in your environment what is the cost of data loss. So I thought that was interesting. With that, Pete, you with us? You ready to talk a little bit more about DLP and where does the data go?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Chuck. And that definitely is a great slide and some interesting information. And that is a challenge for, I think, a lot of our customers is really identifying their own individual risk. So, as we're having conversations with all of you and everybody else that we talk to about security, we spend a lot of time talking about theft, and that absolutely is a huge part of it for sure. But it's not the only way that data gets misappropriated. And Chuck pulled a great slide here, kind of demonstrating, some other ways beyond theft, which is really the number one way of where data either gets itself into a position to be stolen, right, or accidentally gets put into the wrong place. And the top one that you can see here, right, misdelivery. And we're fooling ourselves by putting our disclaimers at the bottom of emails. That if I get this email on accident, I'm required to delete it. The fact is if you accidentally send sensitive data to the wrong person, they're actually not under any obligation to notify you legally at all. Ethically, I would hope that they would, and hopefully they would realize, oh, this was unintended, and delete it. But now you have your data on their system, right? A lot of folks run into low on disk space. I need to copy this over. I need to make room for something else. All of a sudden, we start pushing data to other locations on the network, onto thumb drives, onto our own backup information, right? And pretty soon we've got data in additional places that we soon forget about, right? I just found some backed up photos from 2006 on CD. Now, they're just photos. If somebody grabbed them, they would just see cute pictures of my kids. But if I had a full system backup there, while that data may not be of use to me today, it could be useful to an identity thief. Could find a social security number, could find a bank account number or something like that. And again, the other records on there may be of no use to me, but that data very useful to a hacker or somebody like that. Right? We're also putting a lot of data on USB devices. I've got the tiniest USB thumb drive that you've ever seen in your life, and misplacing that thing, not hard to do. Right? So getting that loaded up with sensitive data and then losing it in the pocket of any jacket that then gets given away or lent out or lost in a bag or whatever. Very easy to see how data can start spreading across the world here. Right? So, a lot of people that we're talking to are thinking encryption and actually practicing encryption, which is awesome. And so especially if they have HIPAA or SOX or some other kinds of compliances, we're talking about encrypting laptops that leave the environment, and that's great, right? So if somebody grabs that laptop out of the security scanner at the airport or whatever, the data on there is going to be of no use to them, or they might not be able to get to the disk. So they're capturing the gear, but they're not going to be able to capture much else. What about when folks are inside the organization, right? Now we're talking about file and folder encryption, and we do talk to folks that are doing that, but not on as a widespread scale as what they're doing on laptops. And we still talk to tons of folks that are not doing anything on their devices that are leaving the environment even. So, right, that becomes kind of the next bastion of protection, is encrypting those files and folders inside so that the wrong folks at the organization can't see them, so that people who do not belong inside of the organization cannot see them, right? So now we're kind of up in our game a little bit here, and we're adding some additional protections to protect that. But how do we make sure that every version of that document is encrypted? If it's not making it to the encrypted file share, is it protected? It probably isn't, right? And so some of the risks that we have now is making sure that the right folks have access to the right files and folders. And typically when people are receiving provisioning, right, that is getting set up correctly. An area where we see a lot of weakness, and we've been guilty of this internally as well, right, is removing privilege. So a person moves laterally throughout the organization or moves up in the organization. Typically they're getting their additional access so that they can do their new job or do their new role. But a lot of times what's missing is that old access or that old privilege that is no longer a part of their function is not getting removed. And there's a lot of great tools out there to help manage that, but it's still very easy, right, to miss those permissions, miss those permission changes, make sure that people have the right kinds of permissions, right, so that you can keep control over the areas where you actually want them to put stuff. The next thing that we're missing, though, is what happens when this stuff starts getting duplicated, right? So we've spoken already a little bit about making copies of data, or data getting into the wrong places. And so this is an actual screenshot here from one of our kind of catch-all file shares here. And you can see here's my folder on this share, and right underneath I have a full backup of my laptop, right, able to be accessed at any time. I had done this as part of a test and then got busy and forgot to come back and address it. So now I have a full backup, which fortunately for me, this is encrypted. I'm not sure if your end users all have the wherewithal to encrypt their backups, but now it's on a file share. Right, and so someone else can grab this now and spend all the time that they need trying to recover this. their first step would be trying to figure out, what created this backup. If your end users are doing it, typically they're going to be using something that's built right into Windows, no protections, very easy to start opening that up and getting inside of the data, right? Next thing that starts happening, drives start getting duplicated. So again, here's our catch-all drive, and at some point, we made a copy of this from one physical disk to the other physical disk. Now I have data in 2 different locations. So when did this happen? Unclear. Why did we do it? Did we have a reason? Was it accidental? Unclear. And the larger your environment gets, the harder it is to start seeing this stuff. So now I've identified my backup erroneously on the catch-all. I delete it from there, but it's not necessarily getting deleted from this other one. So I have it in 2 different places. Even when I'm cleaning it up, if I don't know all the places to look, I'm not taking care of all the data, right? And this is just a simple way to demonstrate of how this stuff starts spreading and proliferating across the environment, right? So we see this all the time. I'm copying something to a file share. It resides on my desktop. I do a save as, and I accidentally save it to the last place that I did a save to. Now I can't find the document, so I do another save as. Now I have it in 2 different places. I take it home to work on a thumb drive. I now have it at home. I have it on my thumb drive. I have it on my desktop. I have it in a file share. One copy of that data is encrypted and protected and shielded from prying eyes, and then I have 4 other copies out in the wild. So how do we start getting control of this, right? The first thing that we really need to think about is how can we start scanning all of our information, looking for that sensitive data. Maybe the very first thing to figure out is what is sensitive to us. One of the easy things to talk about is social security numbers, right? Credit card numbers, invoice numbers, account numbers, things that have a pattern. And that is a chunk of it for sure, right? But what about data that does not have a pattern? How can we start identifying and looking for that? And that's an area that Productive Corp can help you out with by leveraging some of the tools in the Global Velocity Securio products to discover and locate that data, be able to compile reports, and really start getting control of where that data resides, identifying is that an appropriate place for the data to reside, right? And then being able to either delete that, wipe that disk space, encrypt those areas where it's at. What we've rarely seen is we have all of the data handled in the most appropriate way. Once we start identifying here's where it's at, then we can start creating policies and measures to make sure that data can only go to those kinds of areas. And the number one way where we're fooling ourselves a little bit with DLP is really not by not talking about the full picture. So a lot of folks are saying, well, we're doing that with our web filter. So now you're controlling data loss prevention through the internet via web traffic, but what about email? What about thumb drives, right? What about laptops that leave the environment and are no longer going through your web filter? So we need to come up with a good policy and a good way to make sure that we're securing every angle and every attack point so that we can increase our security posture and make sure not only that hackers aren't getting in and threats aren't getting in and malware isn't getting in, but that our data isn't getting out or getting out in an appropriate way. And if it does leave, that we know exactly where it went so that we can identify that that's appropriate or inappropriate and take the proper measures. So what are some takeaway questions, right? Are you relying on your end users to do the right thing? And this really isn't a trust issue. It can be for some environments, right? We trust our people or we don't trust our people. We hear that a lot, that we have a lot of trust, so we're not worried. The problem is a lot of this, as we looked at on one of those early slides, is accidental. People aren't moving this to their USB drive and taking it home to work on it to be malicious, a lot of times they're trying to be a good employee. They're actually trying to get more work done or get that project done in front of deadline, right? If they're storing it to their desktop so they can come back and work on it after lunch, that is the right intention. Potentially an improper usage of the data, right? But the right idea. So this isn't necessarily about accusing your end users or locking your end users down because they're not trustworthy. It's really helping through the use of technology to avoid making mistakes that can be quite costly to your business, right? So the next thing is, do you really understand what your exposure is? What is the cost for you for data loss, right? As Chuck showed on that Poneman versus Verizon report, some pretty vast differences in the cost of data loss, the cost per record, the cost per incident, right? What is your cost? Again, that's something that we can help you understand. If you haven't done that kind of risk assessment, it's highly recommended so that you can really get a good handle on what should your security budget be to help support mitigating and preventing risk and exposure, right? And then the final thing, could you benefit from a third-party evaluation? The interesting thing that we find is the folks that actually probably need third-party evals the least are the ones who do it the most. One of the things that they really feel like they benefit from is we are doing all of these things. We are really constantly assessing and scanning and measuring and monitoring and educating right in our environment. And what they feel like they benefit from is outside eyes coming in and evaluating what they're currently doing and assuring them that they're doing the right things, that they're not missing anything, and then show them some additional things that they can do or areas that they maybe have overlooked, right? And when you're close to something, just like when you're proofreading a document that you have written, right? The hardest thing for me to do is catch my own spelling errors, even though when I read somebody else's document, they jump out at me. Assessing and securing is really a very similar way. And again, that's something that we can definitely help you with and help you get your environment to that next level so that you can be secure enough, not that you're impenetrable, not that anything bad could ever happen, but really to make sure that when the bad guys are looking at your environment, it's secure enough that they're going in a different direction and looking for a weaker target. And part of securing this, right, helps your folks do the right things so that they're not leaving that data exposed unintentionally.
Awesome, Pete. Thank you for another great presentation, and we hope everyone learned 3 or 4 ways employees are exposing sensitive data. If we can help you with anything, feel free to reach out to us, help@productivecorp.com or 800-726-4099.